Hi, my name is Brandon Goldsmith and I am a real estate agent and real estate investor based out of Columbus, Ohio. So today's topic, relocation 101. So you are moving to a new city, you are adapting to a whole new environment, lifestyle, whatever it may be, and this comes with the big question. Number one, should you buy or should you rent when relocating to a new city? So this can be pretty subjective from a lifestyle standpoint and also most importantly, a financial standpoint. Will you be settling down and raising a family, or will you just be in and out just for a quick stint in your life and off to the next city? These are all factors when to consider when thinking about this question. So should I buy or should I rent? Let's get into it. So relocation brings not only financial but lifestyle objections and new constraints as well as adaptations. Have you checked out the neighborhoods, the restaurants? Do you have friends in these cities or have family, or might be having to make new friend groups along the way? All valid points and questions to ask when considering this. This is going to be a big decision and often at times going to be one that you're gonna have to outweigh on a financial cost analysis, whether it makes sense. If you're moving somewhere for 6 months, you're probably not gonna be buying a house. That's where renting or doing even Airbnbs or long-term stays might be part of the equation, but this is just gonna be part of it. Ideally, a lot of it comes down to the neighborhood specific pockets on how well you know the actual city. So just take this into account when analyzing whether you should buy or rent in a new city when relocating. So point number two in the relocation stage is going to be the short-term versus long-term. How long do you plan on staying? 6 months to a year plus, 2 years, whatever it may be. Typically when renting, that's gonna be anywhere within a couple months to a couple years. Whereas when you really start thinking about purchasing, it's gonna be about 3+ to 4+ years. So if you're gonna be somewhere and settling down, this might be an opportunity to take advantage of owning a home and possibly getting equity with appreciation and riding the wave of that. So just know your market, because this is going to be one of the factors to consider when you are thinking about buying a new home. Is the market on the rise? But things can always change, so don't necessarily make your sole decision based on that. Just take it into account. Point number three, let's get to the financial breakdown of this. So what are the costs typically associated with both of them? So when you rent, there is usually just a security deposit, month's pay of rent, and that might be a couple months, whatever you have an agreement in your lease or with your landlord. There's moving expenses and sometimes various amounts of furniture that might not come included within the rental, or you may have to rent other services such as laundry if you don't have your own machine or space for it. So these are all separate, fragmented costs that do add up. Depending on which neighborhood you live in, you could have some pretty high rent. If you live in one of the most expensive and bougiest, for a better lack of terms, areas in your city, you could be paying more than a possible mortgage. So these are all just points to consider when factoring in the price of renting. So security deposit, monthly rent, moving expenses, other utilities, and other items that you may have to rent that might not be included, that you can't purchase and bring to the rental yourself. So what does the payment or the expenses associated with the home buying process look like? So you're gonna need a down payment. That is going to be for sure, and that's gonna be where you talk with a lender and your different options, anywhere on the low end of 3% to sometimes zero money, depending on what type of loan product you're using. But make sure you're taking into account those different loan products and talking with a lender, because you might actually need less than you think when purchasing a home. But let's say you do need a down payment. You will need money saved for this down payment. Closing costs you're gonna need. Moving expenses will still be a factor, and furnishing is typically gonna be a factor as well. But what does the overall outcome look like if you were to rent for 5 years versus owning a home for 5 years? Can you build in equity? Does that make more sense financially than renting for the entire time? So those are gonna be some of the points to consider of the expenses when associated with renting and buying. So point number four is going to be the local market conditions. What does the rental market look like? What does the buying and purchasing market look like, overall home market when getting started on that. It might make your decision easier. If rentals are super in demand in one area, but you can maybe live outside the city for a less competitive price, maybe you consider purchasing. And if you live in a large city where the barrier to entry in home competition and overall price is high, then you might already be leaning towards renting for a period of time. But if it's outweighed, this is going to be something you're going to consider on both ends, rent or buy. You're going to look at your local housing trends, what's it look like, barrier to entry in certain neighborhoods that you might like, the overall price. Talk to this one, want to start talking with maybe some realtors, or just gauge the overall competitiveness of the market, and this might help you make a decision in a shorter period of time or later on when thinking about going from renting to buying. When we are talking about this relocation is going to come the flexibility and stability. Renting is very flexible, and this is going to be something that you don't have to sign very long leases. You can even get month to month in certain cases. Most are going to be a year, but depending on where you're at, these are going to be from a few months to a year-long lease, if not maybe a year and a half to 2 years. But you can move around. You have the option to renew somewhere else, live somewhere else if you're not going to be either that apartment, that home, or that city for a long period of time. This gives you flexibility, and maybe on the other end, you have stability with purchasing a home. Your mortgage stays the same, your overall mortgage payment, if you don't refinance, is going to stay the same, whereas rent, those prices can go up, your landlord can sell. There's all kinds of factors that you might have to move. Whereas in a home, you own that home. If you have a 30-year fixed mortgage, that mortgage is not changing. The bank is not coming and taking that from you. This is your home as long as you make your payments. Property taxes can increase, insurance can increase, so keep that mindful. But overall, this is your home. That payment is staying the same for the next 28, 29, 30 years, or whenever you purchase the home. So keep that in mind. This is going to be something that is a peace of mind for a lot of people, and I would say plays more into the stability of overall lifestyle. Then kind of leading into this, point number 6 is going to be lifestyle and exploration. If you move to a city and want to live in multiple neighborhoods, get a feel for it, that's oftentimes where you might rent in one neighborhood for a year, then another, and have the exploration. But if you're dead set on an area and home prices are just going up, you're going to want to live there long term. That's where you might want to consider buying, just because if you rent in the same neighborhood for 3 years, and overall your home price goes up another 20-30%, this is where the case kid said that you might want to buy and should consider buying, because if home prices are going up due to being desirable, most likely those rental prices are going up. So I would outweigh those options, whether you want to explore a few neighborhoods or you're dead set on one where your heart desires, you like living, you have the restaurants to go to, your neighbors and the community is just all welcoming and that's your place. This is where you might want to settle down for the long term and consider those options of buying as opposed to renting in the same place for multiple years. In point number 7, the economic factors of this is something we're gonna have to talk about, because this is a huge part of the decision. It could be for the better or worse, and there's a right and wrong sometimes, but if you're renting and you have the ability not to get caught in a quote-unquote housing crash or whatever it may be, that the prices tend to dip down or the home values are not increasing a lot, then you wouldn't, if you decided to sell, you wouldn't have that property, so you would be fine to just continue to rent or relocate elsewhere. If you're purchasing and the market takes a turn and you have to sell based on maybe you're moving somewhere else or for other reasons, this is where you may be affected. But on the other hand, if you purchase a home and you have great appreciation and now it's time for you to sell your home, you are gonna reap all the benefit of having that equity. So it really just depends on the point in timing of when you decide to own this home or purchase one and then sell. There's no crystal ball to outline exactly when these are gonna happen. There are economists that predict these, but this is a volatile market, and depending on this is all localized. So it really can come down state by state and city by city and even neighborhood by neighborhood. So take that into account. The economic factors are always going to be part of it, but there will never typically be a true right or wrong time to purchase. And then in those economic favors comes the main point of home equity building. There are a lot of different things you can do with this. If you do get equity in your home, you have options. So you can do what's called a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, which I will talk about in another video, but this is something that you can tap into your home's equity and use it like a credit card or even cash. Just transfer it into your bank account, and this will be used for home renovations, other investment properties. You just have options. So this is something that can't be done from renting, and one of the pros that you might want to consider, because if you are settling down somewhere for a little while and the home prices are going up, you are getting equity, or maybe you rehab the property while you're living there and you do have equity into it. This is going to be one of the advantages of not just having wealth in your name, but actually being able to tap into it. That is one of the benefits of homeownership that can't go without being mentioned. And then in conclusion, it is not always better to rent or purchase. This is very case by case and specific to a person's situation. Due to many of the factors that I mentioned before in this video, there will be situations where purchasing a home will be the right time. Maybe you want to settle down, establish roots, have a family. If you're renting and you're not going to be somewhere for a while, or just need that flexibility in your life, that's the case for renting. So there are many different things and factors that go into renting and buying. No right or wrong answer. Is really dependent on the situation of the individual. But if you do end up deciding to buy, make sure you are consulting professionals. Get with a lender, a local realtor, and really start to understand the home buying process to be able to make those decisions. Hopefully you learned a little bit about relocation, moving to a new city, a new environment, and the pros and cons of renting or buying. As always, feel free to reach out to me with more questions. And if you like this video, go ahead and hit it with a subscribe. See you all in the next one.